So this is our final panel before the closing. We want to have 6 folks up here with us. Tiffany Beckman, Abigail Echohawk, Crystal Echohawk, Gary Ferguson, Janie Hipp, and Lori Watso, all. So thank you all for your attention this afternoon. Just to introduce myself again, since I haven't seen many of you since yesterday, I'm Brenda Child, and I'm the chair of the Department of American Studies in the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Minnesota, formerly chair of the Department of American Indian Studies, and I am Red Lake Ojibwe. So our final panel brings together many of the important voices and leaders in this first annual conference on Native American nutrition. They're here to consider how we continue to build momentum as we work to improve nutrition in our Native communities. The previous speaker is a wonderful example of this. So I'm going to invite the panelists to talk about a couple of things. First of all, I want to ask just kind of more broadly, kind of what's on their mind after these last 2 days of sessions and this gathering. What are some of the next steps and what action for them comes next? So that's the first question I want to pose to the panel. But I also want to pose a second one as well. Listening the last couple of days, I heard the word partnership expressed so many times. That could be partnership with tribal leadership, that could be partnership with the university, indeed even the University of Minnesota. So I'm wondering if you would also kind of address this question of what your expectations might be for partnerships. Perhaps that is with the tribal leadership in your community, because someone mentioned that, but especially because of this particular gathering, what about partnerships with the University of Minnesota, or with other institutions? So I'll kind of open it up and see if we want to give your kind of big thoughts before we go on to the partnership. So what's the big, what actions come next for you? And we'll just kind of go down the row, and maybe we'll start with Tiffany.
Bonjour. So when we talk about partnership, it's really about relationships. And tiaspe is a word I think of when I think about relationships. And they're critical to the success of any work that lies ahead. And a lot of work lies ahead. I'm looking forward to a really bright partnership between many of our tribes and our University of Minnesota here. And I'm sure that all of you who have traveled far and wide to come here have similar thoughts. And one of the things I'm hoping for that will become clearer as time goes on is the role of a land-grant institution in helping us build momentum for American Indian health and nutrition. And I see the commitment there because our leadership has come together as a whole. President Kaler was here, and it was so wonderful and refreshing to see him at the table, ready to roll up his sleeves and say, what are we going to do together? And then our tribal leadership was here and is still here. And so I think that's a really, really wonderful start. Our deans were here. And so I think the support is there. We just have to have more conversations around what is community engagement, why is it important, how does it help us take our medicine and disseminate it broadly so that everyone can benefit, and for humanity. And I guess one thing that I think of as a big thought, and it's not my big thought, but I have to quote Gandhi because I saw him by Lake Nokomis, and me and my husband saw him one day, and he said, well, you should go up to him and go ask him to take a picture. And I said, that's really disrespectful. And I tell you this story because we teach through storytelling in our culture, and And it's very, very important to have respectful relationships that are the cornerstone of future work. And I think that we're on the brink of that. You know, things could have been done better at this meeting. They're going to be done better next year. But so much great stuff has already happened. Just seeing all of you here and having this opportunity to even sit here and have these conversations. For that, I'm thankful. So the quote from Gandhi is, "Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony." And this conference, for me, has been a very harmonious experience. There have been some things that have been difficult, but that builds character. That's how I was brought up, that builds character. I look at this as beauty and harmony, to be able to do this. So, the other thing Gandhi said is, there is more to life than increasing its speed. And being on the tenure track at the university, all I think and feel are things that I have to do. And I will do them. It may not be exactly the pace that I anticipate, but I'm always going to remember to stay balanced and in harmony as I do this work, because the work I do is largely about disseminating our medicines, and I can't do that if I don't come from that good place, that balanced place. So, and the other quote from Gandhi is, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." So anyway, I don't know why I'm quoting Gandhi. He was here and here, and I had
well,
seen
he's
him.
Indian, after all.
I never got the picture by the Lake Nokomis because I wanted to be respectful, but anyway, we saw him. Anyway, enough. Other people need to have a chance to say something.
your big takeaway, next action steps.
Good afternoon, everybody. I see we're running on Indian time, which to me is the best time, because that means we've allowed the spirit and the place to move, to allow those who are willing to share. And those students were so inspiring to me to hear the work that they've been doing, and just the dedication to their people in places that are hard. Harvard is a hard place to be. Universities are a hard place to be as an Indigenous person, when the education that's been given to these students is meant to make them not Indigenous. And so they have to hold on to who they are. And the support systems in this room, just you guys looking at them, praying for them, thinking about them, and all the students is so important. I always think back to my years in college, and I wouldn't have made it without that. So I just want to thank them for everything that they're doing. And it inspired my takeaway for the conference, and going to my favorite Indian, who also is always running on Indian time when he's invited to things in Seattle, Sherman Alexie. No. He's actually not that bad. I heard him tell this story, and he was talking about somebody at a talk that I went to ask him, I was like, well, what's going on in Indian country? What's happening now? He said, the thing about Native people, we always have been resilient. He said, think about fancy dance. Fancy dance evolved out of the powwow culture. It wasn't something that many tribes were doing 300 years ago. He said, as Native people, we have always changed and we have always evolved. And it's been bold, it's been bright, and it's been beautiful. If you look at a fancy dancer, those are all the things that they represent. But at the same time, each step that they take is a prayer and a thought for the people. So within all of that bold, beautiful change is a continuous prayerfulness for the people. And that's my takeaway from this, is that we are on the point of just amazing change that draws on both Indigenous and should be focused on Indigenous science, but draws on from Western strengths, so that together we can come together in a way that brings that bold, bright, beautiful change that evolves into something that is so stunningly beautiful, you just have to stop and look at it. And for me, that has been the takeaway, and I want to thank all of you for the change that you're bringing into your own communities and just the possibilities ahead, because there is no barrier that we can't break, because we've broken them all, and we will continue to do so.
And a couple things that really resonated with me about the conference is that culture is medicine, and that when we think of food and nutrition, we can't talk about it separate from culture. And the cultures that many of us come from, all of us come from a culture that has food as its center, because that's something that we have to do every day in order to survive. And I think as we celebrate food and we celebrate culture, there's so many positive things that we can focus on. and the fact that we are being resilient. It's like this is a movement, and I started in diabetes prevention and doing clinical work in 2002. We've come a long way. It's like right now the conversations, the last presentation about, traditional diet, a high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate diet, and there's actual clinical results showing that makes a difference. And as Alaska Native people, we've been told our traditional diet for many years is it's probably not as good as this diet, and you should switch to this diet. And so I think we're starting to come full circle as we understand that our traditions are healing, and that our diets are healing, and that the more that we can return to those diets, the more that will feed our soul from a spiritual level, as well as feed our bodies, so that we're in balance again. And I think it's a part of the right sizing, the whole environmental issue, as far as we look at culture, as we look at our values. Our values also tell us about balance in the world, and they reflect this macrocosm view of understanding that we are a part of our environment, and we affect that environment. And as we have our internal environment healthy, the more external environment can be healthy. But it starts with us. And the Gandhi quote is a really good one, because healing begins with us. And so as we heal our future generations. And I think that's a really important topic, as well as the trauma-informed care and faith. Really lively discussion over lunch the other day. Yesterday was really powerful, because often people are at a place where they're thinking of survival, right? And often, as in dietetics, nutrition, and counselors, we're trying to move them along the way. But unless we recognize the trauma piece and help people come up with ways that they can deal with that, we're missing the boat. And that means, to me, sometimes it's cultural activities that have nutrition as a part of them. I think that's the answer, rather than coming up and separating nutrition again outside of that. So there's some really beautiful programs, and I'm really inspired by all of your work. I think together we're a part of that movement, and it's a very exciting time. Thank you.
I'm probably going to get the award today for being the shortest speaker on this panel. No, I don't even share. Okay, you got that one. I've just been totally inspired all along this path to get here today. And I'll tell you that there are times, and Crystal knows this, that I just want to take a nap. Right? And I'm sure you all have run into those times as well, that it just seems so hard, and you're talking to yourself, and maybe there's not enough people that you feel that are around that are actually, moving in the same direction that everyone is seeing that we're all moving. And I think it's moments like this where we all come together and we lean on each other, and we take a deep breath, and we know that we're all in this movement together, and that it is so important that we weave each other into our hearts and into our work, because no one person, no one institution, no one group of people, no one tribe can get where we all want to be. And I'm going to take out of today and yesterday and the process of getting here, I keep taking notes all along the way, because I've got 125 Native kids coming to see me in July. And so I want to figure out how many of you actually want to come and speak to them and be a part of our lives when we're together, but also what I can share with them of what's coming out of these gatherings, because they're so powerful and they're so affirming to each one of us, so that we can actually have the energy to keep going in these spaces, that we all know that we have to be on this journey together. It's the time for it. We're in the middle of watching this happen before our very eyes. All of us have a role in it somehow, and we all have to stay together, really. I mean, we've got to all stay together and push on these things, because if we do that, then we're going to get all of our people where we need them to be quicker. If we all try to just run off and do it ourselves, or disintegrate into a ball of meh, then we will have missed this important opportunity. And I'll tell you, I talk to Crystal all the time. This is it. This is the time. And all of us need to know that 10 years from now isn't the time, it's now. And it's so important to sit in that and to gain your own energy and regrouping and fill yourself up with that. And know that you have such an important role in each one of your communities and all of your work to be on this path, all of us together. And we've got to make sure that our young people are deeply woven in to every single step we take, because they've got to take this and run with it. It's got to have their signature on it. It's about them. And so I know I've said that over and over again. I feel like a grandma who's like, but maybe I am. But anyway, it's been a powerful, powerful time with all of you all. And we've got work to do. Very exciting.
You're a hard act to follow. So, I think I'm looking around the audience. I feel like exhausted, right? I'm tired. But that's a good tired, and I'm in a place of gratitude for it. We all have been sort of hosed down in a wonderful way over the last couple of days with just mind-blowing work and knowledge, and just these moments where I've kind of ducked in and out of conversations and presentations, and it's just light bulbs are going off, and wow, I didn't know that this work was going on over here in Wisconsin or over here in New Mexico. And so it's being in that moment of gratitude, and gratitude to Shakopee, and to Seeds of Native Health, and to the University of Minnesota, and all of the folks that made this happen, and for all of you making this journey here. This is remarkable. And I'm living in a place of gratitude because I feel like this is more than a conference. How many conferences do we go to all year long? And it's lovely feeling like we're in a moment where this is about movement building. And there's something bigger here. There's something, it's been a conversation that's had over the last couple of days about something about this conference has hit a nerve in a good way, because so many of you came, and there were people saying, we still want to get in. I swear I'm on that registration list, and talking about needing to get bigger venues next year. And those are all good problems to have. And I think it reminds me of movement building, because it was great listening to the report backs and kind of how messy maybe the conversations were, or awkward, or even hearing about the difficult moments, because that's a struggle. That's movement building. This is not going to be easy. And we just need to celebrate being in this moment. And I really feel like we are in this moment. And Janie says it so many times, like never before, this momentum. Something's happening here. The forces are converging. And so that's sort of my big takeaway is we are in this moment of movement building. And it is tough. And it's going to force us to be uncomfortable. And it's going to force us to think outside of the box. And I was just looking at this wonderful quote, that Zach Ducheneau, dear friend, Intertribal Ag Council, said, and it's in your Fertile Ground report. But it was said, we've tried everything except for fixing our food system. And I guess that's just like the final kind of takeaway is we can't have nutrition, we can't talk about, health disparities and all of these other things, right? And food-related, diseases, diet-related diseases, if we're not thinking about our food systems, right? And the root of that, but then understanding within that, it's about feeding ourselves, and that's our land, that's tribal sovereignty, that's our culture, that's who we are as Indian people, that's economic development, that's dealing with poverty. That's a lot of things, and we call it social determinants of health. But, it's that all-encompassing. And so I think more than anything, I want to challenge us to remember that we are part of a movement, even if it's not always pretty and totally connected. We're moving forward. And challenge us to think outside of the box and start making these linkages. And that's how we're really going to reverse this, humanitarian crisis that we're facing in terms of, real serious health issues with our people. So.
Thank you. Am I on?
Yeah.
I am on. Thank you. In thinking about the title of the panel here, Building Momentum, and what I would say to you, you are the momentum, right? We're doing all this good work. You're doing all of this good work. But actually, I feel like Seeds of Native Health is kind of standing on your shoulders, standing on the shoulders of the people who are here presenting to us and sharing with us. And we're just trying to maybe provide a vehicle, provide some support. But you are the momentum, and your movement is what builds it. So I appreciate that, and I thank you for that. And I thought that since we have been doing this work in Seeds of Native Health for almost 2 years now, I thought maybe I would just share with you some of the things that we've learned. And really, it really fits in with, it's actually repeating many of the things that we have heard here over the last couple of days. But I thought it might be a nice little short summary. I think I'm going to be the shortest. It'll be a short summary, okay? So to keep things going, all right? We as Native people are the ones to take charge of improving the nutritional health of Native people. We have the knowledge, we have the wisdom, we have the skills. We need to gather support and do the work. That's part of our momentum. Now, we don't want to do it alone, right? Or maybe we would want to do it alone, but I don't think we can do it alone, right? And we've heard that over and over again. So we need to engage more allies in this work. All those that we've talked about, higher education institutions, tribal colleges, research centers, foundations, and governments should all be a part of our work. And when we do that together, not only do we benefit, but everyone around us benefits. And that's not a bad thing, right? We need a comprehensive approach to dealing with food and nutritional crisis in Native country. So again, we have the indigenous knowledge, we need the modern scientific research, we need to create inspiration. I loved it when Justin said that, it's just not awareness raising education, but create inspiration in our programs and within our programs, working with legal systems, building human capacity, investing and supporting our food producers, and much more. And the thing that I'm very, very excited about, and what we've added most recently in our work in Seeds of Native Health, is advocacy and policy making within tribal governments and elsewhere. That's going to be a big piece of our work as we move forward, a very important piece. And finally, we all have to be willing to take a risk, and we all have to be willing to experiment and know that sometimes it's not going to work, sometimes it's going to fail in the end, but we can't be afraid of that. And we need to move forward. We need to think carefully, apply our precious resources wisely, and when we have good successes, share them with the world. Because I still believe that natives are going to feed natives, and natives may just feed the country and the world. I think it can happen. Thank you.
Woo-hoo. Thank you so much. Those are really wonderful words, and from beginning to end. I think we still have more than 5 minutes, so maybe I'll move on to that kind of second question I posed about, and this will transition us really into our closing remarks from Dean Burr and also Lori's comments that we're going to hear. And I think it was Tiffany who brought up the role of the land grant institution. And so, I'm one of the few historians in the room, so I kind of like to think, we're not obsessed with dates, but once in a while there's some really dates that are very stand out to people like me. And one of those is the date of the act that created the land grant institution, and that date of the Morrill Act was actually 1862. And so I know that's a date that resonates in certain ways in Native communities, in particular here in Minnesota, because of the Dakota War of 1862. And up from where I'm from at Red Lake, just the next year in the aftermath, right, seeing what was happening in southern Minnesota, we ceded a large portion of our western reservation over to the land over in North Dakota of the Red River Valley. And you can imagine what wonderful agricultural land that was. So is there a connection between the problems that we have today and what happened 150 years ago? I think there is a very direct connection. So I wonder if anyone wants to think about not just, partnerships, but what is the responsibility of the university, land-grant institutions, and other institutions of higher education as we deal with the many issues that we need to address in the coming decades. And we'll see also Dean Burr's comments as well.
Brenda, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's part of our healing journey. And 1862 is a very important year for a lot of reasons, and I'm not going to revisit it because I don't think that was the purpose of your question, but there were 38 plus 2 that day that suffered incredibly and self-sacrificed in the name of a greater future for everybody that was involved. And I wasn't there, so I can't talk about it. But we honor them by remembering them, the 38 plus 2. And that was the same year the 1862 Morrill Act came. And so the history speaks for itself. And I'm not a historian, but for the record, I will tell you, it was not Gandhi that I saw walking by Lake Nohomis. It was actually the Dalai Lama. He had on the orange and the gold attire. And because I was up very late last night and had 1 hour of sleep, I confused my quotes. But it was the Dalai Lama. And so I'm going to move on with a peaceful quote, because I'll bring up Chairman Stan Crooks again, because I'm honoring him by remembering him and never forgetting the things he taught me about leadership. One of the things he taught me is you go through the world and you build partnerships, good neighbors, good friends, you build bridges, and that's how you build community. And as a physician, I heard those words, and to me that means that's how we heal everybody. So the Dalai Lama said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Now I'm going to give the floor to the rest of you. Very good.
If I could just, for me, I feel like I'm the lay person over here that has nothing to do with academia. Sorry, I'll get a little bit closer. For me, just to your point and just thinking about this, I was really interested and excited when Shakopee and Seeds of Native Health decided to partner with the University of Minnesota. And being someone who's worked in public health for a while and from a philanthropic perspective, there's just not a lot of trust there. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is really the opportunity about changing the nature of the relationship and not only just between Shakopee as a tribe, as a sovereign nation, and this university, but I think it's also about setting the tone for about way that engagement works in other tribal communities and with other academic institutions. And I think it's exciting to sit in a space, and I'm going to call out my dear cousin over here I want to be when I grow up, Abigail. But that kind of call for equity and that call for transformation in relationship, because these can, if they're true partnerships and there's true equity, not only can we really look at potentially reversing some of the just grave health disparities that our communities are facing, but we can foster innovation too. This isn't just the negative, it's this all of this creativity. And so for me, that's my big hope, and I think that that's rife with challenges, and I think that that's come out a couple times here, and that's okay, and that's what's really exciting for me. So, but sorry, Abigail.
Following my brilliant, who I wanted to be when I grew up, Crystal. As somebody who does work for a land grants institution, when I came into the university, it was a big struggle for me. And I actually thought back to this story. I can't help but tell stories, I'm sorry. But it was from somebody who I sat through, and he was telling me that as a kid growing up, he grew up with all his relatives in the house. And when he went to school for the first time, they called him by his name. And there's, raise your hand, is John here? And he said he looked around, they're like, is John here? And the teacher came and rapped on the desk, like, John, raise your hand. And he realized that he didn't identify himself with that name, that English name, because who he knew himself was as grandson, as nephew, as son, and that's what his family called him. They called him into relation to who they were. And when I began to work at the university, I had to think, when I'm going into this, it's about partnerships, it's about all the things Tiffany was talking about. And in that, I had to call my colleagues friend. And that's where partnership can be and where it can continue to grow. Right now, we're worked really hard at WSU. My chancellor at the Spokane campus, where my office is located at, is when she gets up and she talks to the tribe, she said, as a lands grants institution whose responsibility is to the first people of this land and the state of Washington, the people in the state of Washington. We need every chancellor, every dean, every administrator to say that, because it is their responsibility to the first people of the land. And it's our responsibility as Indigenous people working in academia to encourage them to practice critical honesty. And that means you look at the structures that exist that stifle the self-determination of tribal nations and of urban Indian people. Because those structures are there, we're dealing with institutionalized racism, and we have to break it down. And it takes us going in and recognizing and calling those colleagues friend.
And just building upon that, I think it's important to acknowledge it's about relationships. And the people who are at the table right now at this meeting represent a lot of really amazing organizations. And I feel like as we develop those relationships, there's always a history. And I serve on a board, which will not be named right now, that we're working with. There's lots of old history in the board, lots of really amazing elders as well. But sometimes we hear this comment, we've been through this and through this. We've tried that before. And I'm like, well, I've been on the board for 3 years and we haven't tried it since I've been here. Right? And so it's kind of like, as a new generation, sometimes we don't need to borrow the old struggle of the past. It's not ours. Yes, we need to heal that, but we need to also move forward. And we can't be stuck on the past. We have to be looking to the future. And that's where deep relationships, relationship building, in healthcare, behavioral health is a really important partner when we look at nutrition and food systems, because it involves behavior change. And so looking at where funding is and resources, we need to partner up and really understand that it takes a community, it takes a group, like in our larger organizations, we need to partner up with other folks that have funding. And it isn't, when you start thinking holistically, it's not that much of a stretch to think about behavioral health or other partners that can help you along your road to achieve the results of, culture is medicine, food is medicine. And so again, we need to grow the good. I think it's a really important concept when we think of what's working. We need to not get stuck in the trauma drama. We need to move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Did you want to say one more?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment. Thank you, Tiffany, for quoting our past chairman. And I want to say that I don't think that we would have been able to be here. We would not have been able to start the initiative, Seeds of Native Health, without the long-standing political stability that we have had in this community. We would not have the success that we have. And the vast majority of that was under the leadership of Stan Crook. So we can thank him for our presence here today. And he was a very, very smart man. And our relationship, our partnership with the university is long-standing. We've engaged in this, but we've worked in other ways too. Scholarship programs, the Tribal Plaza, and Pollinator Research Lab. So we have a history. And I think what I want to say is that just as we have said here that Indian Native country is a good investment, and we're asking people to invest in us, we need to make that investment outwards too. So we're asking them to be our partners. We need to be good partners. So we have a long history, and it takes time. And if you work at it, you can get through things and have good relationships.
Thank you so much. Thanks for those good words, Lori. And thank you, friends on the panel. Thank you, allies. This was I really enjoyed hearing your final thoughts. Thank you for the good work that you do when you leave here.